Hey, what's up everyone? It's Kale here with another analysis lesson review where I take people who I've been surf coaching, have a look at what they're doing and suggest some possible improvements. But before we get into that, hey, exciting news. I'm coming to California. A lot of you guys know this, but we finally released and finalized the dates for our film screenings. I'm going to be screening the Longevity film and the Gut movie, my two documentaries that I wrote and produced and was in. We're going to be screening those between LA and San Diego. We've even got some screenings in San Francisco as well. And then we're going to do a couple of surf meetups too. So I'd love for you guys to check it out. All the details are on my Instagram at Kale's Broccoli. My name is Kale Brock, but my Instagram is at Kale's Broccoli. And on my YouTube channel at Kale's Broccoli, where I upload a bunch of surf tutorials as well. And I'll put the California 2020 link in the description below. So hey, it'd be good to meet you all and hang out. I feel like we've just got this digital relationship. It's not fulfilling me. Wow, I'm so sunscreeny and messed up. Anyway, let's talk about surfing, shall we? That's why you're here. The first thing that I want to talk about today is speed generation, and in particular, coordinated speed generation. In order for us to actually generate speed well and harness the power that a wave has to offer effectively, is to coordinate our lower and our upper body. It seems like when I talk about this, a lot of people just focus on the legs. And that's certainly what I was seeing with some surfers that I was working with on the weekend. The surf ended up being a little bit small and gutless, so, admittedly quite tricky conditions to excel in. But what I noticed was this one particular surfer, who's a good surfer, has got good positioning, good awareness as to where to be in terms of waves, was mostly using his lower body when it came to speed generation. When we talk about speed generation, the only way it occurs and the only way turning occurs is by creating a torqued body, so like a twisted body. And when that body is twisted, say my upper body is more twisted than my lower body, it creates that torque motion through the body, which creates the turn, which puts either side of the board on rail, which engages with the water and then moves us through a turn. Now, essentially, speed generation is just a minor version of a cutback or a top turn or a re-entry. It's just a less radical change in direction. A lot of speed generation needs to be very forward in nature. A lot of us struggle with that idea. We want to be more back-footed than we should be. We think that if we're not back-footed, we're going to nosedive, when in reality, a lot of successful surfers actually lean forward and everything energetically is just moving forward. Their speed generation is moving forward, and their turns and their takeoffs are all moving forward whilst the back foot is still engaged. Now, in saying that, we also need some coordination between the upper and the lower body, where the surfer was sort of trimming along this little left-hander, not really using the upper body as much as he could. Notice how the arms are a little bit soft and wayward. That generally just dissipates energy, so I try to rein that in and keep the arms both facing forward a little bit. Not moving between those thirds and not coordinating and doing that twisting up and down motion is diminishing any sort of potential that the wave's going to offer. So what I like to do with surfers like this, and I'm sure there's so many, I remember I was like this for a long time during my intermediate phase, and there was one wave, I still remember the wave, where I actually caught it and I felt that motion. I just watched my older brother surf and all of his friends who ripped, right? And I felt the motion of going up and down and I went, oh, that's it. I finally get it. So that was the way that I learned how to do it. Now, to offer that to the people that I coach, I often get them skateboarding in the car park. So whether they've got a Carver, whether they've got a Smooth Star, or whatever surf trainer skateboard they're using, we get them on it in the car park or in the skate park to actually work on it. And this is the movement we're working on. It's that speed pumping motion. It's that back and forth. It's that twisting of the lower body, the twisting the upper body. When I was working with the guys at Smooth Star, they called it the scoop and clap, right? So you're sort of scooping up with the trailing arm and then clapping over your shoulder with the other arm. And I think this sort of skateboarding motion, I used to do this on just regular skateboards as well. And to be honest, that's how I found a lot of progression in surfing, is just by skateboarding. So I think this really does help in terms of progressing and learning that feeling that's associated with speed generation. If we sort of watch me putting this in action on this wave here on my twin fin, we really see the movements overemphasized to a certain extent, don't we? And notice what initiates the turn. It's actually the eyeballs. When I'm speed pumping, my eyes are actually shifting from up the wave like this to down the wave like this. And my body tends to follow. So you notice it's that spring up, it's that compression coiled spring position into an extension at the top of the wave. Then it's back down into a compression as I go back down the wave to harness all that power and drive that speed forward. Again, notice how my body is really moving forward. And I know that can sound a little bit esoteric and too general and wish-washy, but that's actually what's happening, is everything is moving forward. So trying to get surfers to find that feeling, with hopefully with some clean open face waves. Again, the surfer had to deal with some pretty tricky conditions on this particular day, is a massive step. And it does come often, I find, just like that. Like they get one wave and they feel it, and then they can reapproximate and reappropriate that feeling again in the next session, and all of a sudden they've got speed pumping dialed. And again, in essence, once they've got that speed pumping dialed, they can then transition those speed pumps, those changes in directions, into bigger turns as well, and progress quite fast. So it does happen. It takes a little bit of practice with skateboarding. It takes finding that feeling on the wave, really active and using your eyes, and remembering that coordination between the lower body and the upper body. It's that compression at the bottom of the wave, the extension at the top, compression at the bottom, extension at the top, compression at the bottom, extension at the top, often driven from the hips. Now, I know there's so many things that I just talked about there, but you will find it. It's very much a kinesthetic thing, and I think the skateboarding and again, time in the water, the practice really will help. Okay, let's move on. I wanted to talk about paddling in and taking off on an angle. This is something that I think is really helpful, particularly on bigger boards. Now, obviously, when we're learning, when we're starting surfing, we often start on those bigger foamies or those long boards, or just the wider, more buoyant fishes to give us more control. It's an appropriate thing to do. Perfect. Now, the limitation with those boards is they often don't fit in the wave that well. So if you've got a 2-foot wave, but you've got an 8-foot mal or an 8-foot foamy, and you try and ride straight down the face of that 2-foot wave, what's going to happen? The board has to nosedive because there's literally not enough room. The only way you can actually ride it effectively is to trim across the face of the wave, because obviously sideways, you've got a lot more space to work with on a wave. So paddling in on an angle is actually a really helpful strategy to start getting some practice in when it comes to trimming along the face of the wave, as opposed to going straight in whitewater. This surfer that I worked with had a lot of uncertainty in regards to positioning and paddling, and it turned out they were both perfect. Actually way more advanced than where he was once he actually started standing up on the wave. So what we saw was there were a few restrictions with paddling in the sense that he was very comfortable paddling in straight on a wave. And then when he tried to get up and trim and change direction, the board size, the thickness of the rails tended to hinder that progression. So without standing right on the back of the board and doing like a kickstall, like you often see longboarders do, which looks incredibly graceful when it's done well, like by professional longboarders, it's pretty hard to turn these boards. You know, I've got a 7 or a 6 foot foamy. It's a small foamy, and even that's quite hard to turn. So an 8 foot foamy, it's a whole nother level. So by paddling in on an angle, we can actually sort of bypass that turn that we have to do. If we look at the surfer here, there was kind of a good opportunity for a nice wave. If you have a look at him in that position, that's the perfect opportunity to be paddling sideways. But you'll notice that he's coming straight towards camera. And what happens is the board's just got nowhere to go, and he actually ends up nosediving. Now, that is quite a common thing on these sorts of boards. I had someone come in after who had the same sort of challenge. By taking off sideways, we can actually give ourselves a better advantage, or we're jumping ahead of ourselves and sort of bypassing that initial turn that needs to occur. Let's have a look. If we look at these two examples of me on the foamy that I mentioned, notice how I really sort of pull the board sideways as I catch the wave, in order to just skip past that section and glide into that first little bottom turn. And that way that you kind of you cheat the system in a way, and you avoid that bucket at the bottom of the wave that is such a challenge to people. Often I see just people, you know, pulling back or doing whatever because they're scared of that bucket. If we can paddle sideways and get away from it, then everything changes. And it can be as obvious and as easy as this wave here, where I actually took my time in getting up and steered the board in that arched up position before even deciding to pop up. It can be that easy. So just by paddling in on an angle, we can make everything so much easier. Now, in saying that, what I want you to notice with some of these waves is that I'm still taking off centered over my board. So you see that I don't actually change the way I pop up. That's something that we still need to get used to. I'm popping up going sideways, but I'm paddling in going sideways, but I still pop up very centered over the board. That's very important, because if we pop up and we're not only trimming sideways on our belly, but we're also leaning sideways, what's going to happen? We're just going to tilt over. So I hope that made sense, guys. Main points today are just going to be coordinate the upper and the lower body when it comes to speed generation. Have a very forward motion mindset when doing so. Get on the skateboard. It really helps. Once you find the feeling, you'll get there. Use your eyes very strategically and consciously in those moments. Look up to the top of the wave. Look to the bottom. Compression at the bottom. Extension at the top. Those are the general rules, right? And then when it comes to paddling in and taking off, paddling in on an angle, not only on these longboards, which will really help you bypass that initial bottom turn that you have to do and start trimming straight away, but also in really fast waves, paddling in on an angle can help you get in and get in front of a section or get straight into a tube as well. So it's a really handy skill to master. So make sure you stay centered over the top of your board. Hey guys, coming to California. How good's that? I'm so pumped. I feel like LA, San Diego's got a big special place in my heart. I lived there for 6 months when I was younger. Had the best time. I've visited a bunch since. It's such an awesome, happening, vibing place. I'm going to be hanging out in Venice a bunch. I might even go to Texas and go do the wave pool, which I'm super excited about. And of course, I'm doing a bunch of film screenings. The Gut movie, the longevity film, 2 films and stories that I'm really proud of that I'd love for you guys to see. So I've put all the details on my Instagram at Kales Broccoli, on my YouTube at Kales Broccoli, and I put a link in the description below as well. Thanks for tuning in, guys. I probably won't be able to put out another video until I get back from LA, so I will chat to you then, or I'll see you on the gram. Ew.